I'll click happy here. Quick review of something coming later in the session. But hello, everyone. Happy Thursday, and welcome to our Streaming Ads Network NY webinar. We are thrilled to be partnering with Rockerbox to bring you this webinar today. So first, let's jump into some logistics. The first, everyone's favorite question, the recording and slides will be in your inbox shortly after the session today. So depending what time zone you're in, maybe by end of day, but we will have both the recording and the deck to you today. Also, over the next hour, if you do have to hop off, you can log back in anytime with that same link that has been in your calendar hold and in your inbox. We also have 2 great resources in our handout section, so make sure to download those. Our big bets for CMO in 2023 and a streaming resource as well. Also, as many of you all have already, join our chat, introduce yourselves, let us know where you're tuning in from. We've got everyone from Michigan to New York, India, Brazil, Durham, North Carolina, Fort Lauderdale. So really all over the map, which we love to see. Also during the session, you can submit questions in the chat as they arise, and we'll get those queued up for our speakers at the end of the session. Also, make sure to join our poll questions. We have 2 live right now, one of which we'll get to in a moment, and the second of which letting us know if you're interested in talking with our teams after the session today. I'll also introduce myself. My name is Carrie Mallett. I'm a content strategist here at Tenuity, and I'll be hosting our webinar today. So a little bit about Tenuity for those who may not be familiar. Here at Tenuity, we've mastered the media that matters most. Tenuity is the largest independent performance marketing firm across streaming TV and the triopoly of Google, Facebook, and Amazon. At Tenuity, we understand that success requires both strategy and channel specialization. That approach wins us awards and recognition across the industry, such as the American Business TV Awards and the Shorty Awards, and allows us to grow some amazing clients like those that you see here. All right, I'm going to turn it over to our amazing speaker lineup to introduce themselves, starting with Aiden.
Awesome. Thank you, Carrie. Hi, all. My name is Aiden Arnold, Director of Client Strategy here at BlissPoint Media, recently acquired by Tenuity. I've been with BlissPoint for over 3 years, helping companies across varying verticals scale their streaming and traditional TV campaigns, optimizing for both brand and performance metrics. And I'll kick it over to Matt.
Thanks, Aiden. Hey, I'm Matt Parrott, Creative Director here at Tenuity of Streaming Advanced TV. I've been in the industry about 20 years, building everything from Super Bowl spots to performance streaming for Fortune 500 clients. And super excited to talk more about streaming today with y'all. I'll toss it over to Kelsey.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. I'm Kelsey. I'm the head of customer success at Rockerbox. I've been at Rockerbox a little over 3 years and work with a number of our clients. And I'll give you a little bit of context on who is Rockerbox. So Rockerbox is a marketing measurement platform that enables you to track all of your marketing channels, spend, and conversion in one place. And this really unlocks the ability to understand what is your deduplicated performance across channels, gain insight on user path to conversion, and ultimately make smarter marketing decisions. And here's a few of the brands that we work with. And I already touched on this, but really, our end goal is to give you more clarity into your customer path to conversion. So what we're going to talk about today is how you can understand, right, the impact of your streaming ads in combination with those other channels in your mix.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. We're so excited to have you and Rockerbox joining us today. And so I'm going to walk through our agenda. First, we're going to talk about what makes streaming interesting, and then what works in streaming, and also how we know that it works. How it all comes together with some case study examples, adding value to streaming measurement, and then finally Q&A. But before we dive into all of that, we want to hear from you all. And so we want to hear, what's your biggest roadblock to utilizing streaming? Would you say it's price? Is it the production level required? Is it not understanding measurement available, overall knowledge level? Or if it's something else, you can let us know in the chat. So that poll is live in that polls dashboard right now if you toggle over from chat to polls. All right, so let's take a look at how responses are coming in. Looks like we've got responses across the board. Not understanding measurement available seems to be solidly in first place. The good news is that we have 3 experts here to dive into all of that. And so I am going to go off camera and hand it over to them.
Awesome. So Obviously, we're here to talk about streaming, but we want to talk a little bit about what makes streaming specifically interesting, both to us as performance marketers and to general marketers all around. Got a few points here that have been bubbling up to the top that I think everybody will find a little bit interesting. The first thing is there's a hard truth out there. The funnel has collapsed. Everything from brand to conversion, things like that, has gotten squished down. And we don't see that anywhere more apparent than in streaming. Brand performance, they've all become one, right? All of it's digital, all of it's measurable, all of it is performance. When you look back in the day, there were two kind of traditional ways of looking at, especially TV, right? There was brand, and there was kind of direct response, right? Brand was all about awareness and affinity. It was upper funnel, and it generally is very, expensive, superior aesthetics, but not expected to elicit any sort of immediate response. This goes back to the roots of broadcast, where in broadcast, you didn't have a lot of that measurement capability, but things have changed with technology. So direct response, though, was kind of an immediate activation side of it, always lower funnel, and generally was inferior aesthetics because it was cranked out quicker to support that main campaign. But the goal of that was tangible customer response. And they were both kind of separate. Even agencies treated them separately, brands and marketers treated them separately. In reality, we're seeing that merge based on the fact that we can now measure in extremely interesting ways for streaming. And I'll kick it over to Aiden. You can talk a little bit more about that.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. So yeah, before we can begin to discuss performance, we have to address measurement. And, because streaming is not a click-based medium, attribution is significantly more difficult than channels with a more traditional click stream, such as display or search or social. So if we have no click stream, then what is the solution? If I can get over to my next slide there. So we refer to our methodology as one-to-one matching. So looks like we skipped too many. Thank you. We refer to our methodology as one-to-one matching. So using identifiers associated with the various screens the ads are served on and the devices where conversions occur, we actually are able to determine when a site visit or a purchase is made by somebody who has previously seen a streaming ad. And to address the complex yet common case of a user using multiple devices, we use a graph-based approach to dynamically associate individual devices that frequently share the same IP address and vice versa. So this complex case of multiple screens, and a lack of a click stream, we actually do have a solution in place to allow us to create a full funnel measurement solution for streaming. And so because of this, we do have, a test and learn environment. And this streaming channel really can be as flexible, as precise, and as dynamic as other channels when it comes to measurement. And so I'll pass it back to Matt now to talk a little bit more about what it actually takes to produce streaming creative so that we can actually explore this space in further detail.
Awesome. So part of the reason why we can treat it more as an evolving space is that streaming production these days is not as expensive as people think. At one time, creating a TV spot could be millions of dollars. I've done a few of those, but nowadays there are a lot of ways to approach streaming production that allows us a lot of opportunity to create more flexible pieces that can be worked into a testing plan, right? So the purpose built is where people used to be. You'd run a camera, you'd make a big, huge production, live action. However, that doesn't have to be a roadblock because using streaming, the opportunity lies in adaptation and assembly. So adapting existing video ads for the streaming environment, making sure it works within streaming, but also assembly of net new ads from existing video and static elements is an option. So that when you build out a full test plan, you can actually plan for how your creative will change and evolve based on the inputs that you receive, which is really fun for me because starting in broadcast, we made one spot, right? We put that one spot out into the world. We prayed it worked. And sometimes it did. And we'd all celebrate. Maybe there'd be an award or something. But nowadays, we can see what's working. We can see what's not working. We can change it. And we can always evolve and make it better, which is a really cool thing, particularly if you're kind of a perfectionist who's never happy in the first place. So speaking of that, let's talk about creative best practices. So what works in streaming based on everything that we've learned? And we know this is a fresh medium and it demands a fresh approach to production and creation of creative elements. There are kind of 4 categories you really want to keep in mind as you're doing this. I call it cast, but there are a lot of ways this breaks down. We'll probably step through a few of them here, but I can happily do a much deeper dive on best practices at another time. These are the hard ones. Content, where you're optimizing your content for the medium and the audience expectation, huge. Audience, hitting that target that matters with that message that matters to them. Story, which you're forging that emotional connection between your brand and the consumer. And then testing, obviously, test and refine that video like never before. So we'll hit a few important categories here that fall within the cast system. And right size is one of the first things, right? It is TV, but it's not just TV. Streaming can appear in a lot of different places. It can be on a tablet, it can be on an iPhone, it can be on a postage stamp somewhere. You never know. So you want to make sure that when you are creating for this medium, it works on the biggest TV in the house, but it also works everywhere else that people might be consuming this content. As a result, it's not just a resize. Like, you don't simply want to recycle social videos or maybe even broadcast TV spots. You want to adapt them for the medium to make sure that you are using it to the greatest capability available. And that means some easy things like 16:9 horizontal aspect ratio, obviously, but sometimes cut for exactly 30 seconds, because a lot of times the 15s cost the same and the spots are placed in a time slot. So it's not like social where you can have a window of length. You want to nail your lengths hard. And additionally, make sure your text readability, your audio works within that medium. And then plan for shooting so that all of your elements will crop in for those proper aspect ratios. A really important thing for TV and for streaming is that it's a sound down environment. So you want to use all that bandwidth you can to design for that deeper emotional engagement that only audio relays. So sonic branding is a very strong, important way to make your brand kind of pop out and make an impact that's memorable in people's minds. So use sonic branding, open and close with that sonic branding. And you see the doink doink over there. You might be familiar with that at a famous TV show. Just spelling it out makes a cue in a lot of people's minds. You want to feature voiceover paired on screen with visuals or a person talking. So you're driving home that message, you're connecting with the audience. And you want to play with sound design so you have a deep experience that really pulls at people's heartstrings through their ears. And then remember, this is an interesting one if you're used to working in social, but an audio track is often required for delivery. Your video element will get rejected oftentimes if it doesn't have audio. You want to differentiate, so you want to tailor your message, right? There's an addressable nature to streaming, so that allows us and empowers us as marketers to parse our message plan, specifically those audience care abouts, and that also helps drive goals at every level of the funnel. So analyze your consumer journey. Look at the KPIs that you have. Find those messaging segments, and then create between 2 and 4 simultaneous messages. So you're hitting people across the activation spectrum. That helps enhance performance. And more than one spot is incredibly important because consumers are not all the same, right? And we're all consumers. So we know that a single message delivered once is much less likely to appeal. And memorability is really increased when the idea is encoded across multiple neural pathways. And music or speaking audio works best. I would say a lot of times it's going to be a combination of both. It's something that should interplay against each other usually. When we look at narrative, this is really, really important because not only are you telling a story and connecting with the audience, but there is a formula that starts to bubble to the top that shows us what works really well for effectively driving story and connecting with folks and getting them to actually activate at the end of the day. So there's a couple things to look at here. There's a story arc, which you see in the upper right there. The traditional story arc is a build to a reveal. You can imagine that as a movie or as a a Super Bowl spot where you're drawing people in, you're telling a story, then you're revealing at the end, right? That works great in a medium where people are leaned in and engaged. However, a lot of times you're laying back on your couch. This might be in a skippable world. So you want to make sure that there's an emerging story arc. You're hitting people high and keeping that energy up throughout. And throughout the spot, there is kind of a sequence. I think we'll see this at some of the examples we're going to look at, where you start high, right? You have that ID and branding. You're opening and closing with your sonic branding. You're setting the premise quickly. You're intriguing with a fast pace. It's usually more than 2 shots to open. Quick but not frenetic. You want to introduce your product and brand very early within the first 5 seconds. And if you have people or celebrities, it's great to get them in as early as possible. And then from there, you want to champion and reinforce. You're driving it home by adding layers. You're making the product features and benefits the hero. And you're closing with a strong offer that's on screen for a minimum of 3 seconds or a specific action. So visit, a buy now, a sign up, a learn more. And you want to feature a URL or QR code because there are no buttons in this environment, obviously, because it's on the TV. And I see some questions about activating QR codes. Activating is a really important piece of what we want to do with every TV or every streaming commercial. We want to give people somewhere to go, right? So there's several ways to do this. There's a site URL, right? Just keep it short, sweet, legible. A QR code is a great one because a lot of times, I know I do this, I'm sure y'all do that. You're sitting on the couch, you're watching some streaming show, you've got your phone in your hand. It's really easy for you and myself to actually just scan that QR code and activate from there. So put it up there and give them the screen time to activate it. If it's only up there a short period, the chances of them using it are much shorter because they do have to realize it's there. They have to be intrigued by what's going on in the spot, and they have to activate on that. So, and additionally, you could even do things like text to whatever. So inspire your audience to start a conversation through SMS. So word on measurement, though, these are very, very important because we're all humans. We need to know where to go. You need to tell us what to do for us to activate on it. However, for measurement, you don't need these for measurement because, as Aiden will get into, there are other ways that measure that seamless lower funnel experience. So these are mostly for that human factor of like, hey, tell me where to go so I can go there. And then finally, I think I saved the best for last here. We want to connect, right? We are all humans. We respond on an emotional level to everything. So we want to tell a story that really creates a connection, right? And adds value to your audience's needs and wants and to your product or your brand. So find that story, find that human truth, and really use the spot to bring that to life. There's a lot of different ways to do this. It can be your product benefits. It can be an emotional story. But there are other more functional things like find people, use them early in the spot, use humor, intrigue, or action to hit emotional hot buttons, convey a tangible product benefit that people are really going to care about. And a lot of times a known celebrity actually catches attention and enhances trust. So that's another way in if you do have a higher budget level. And then from there, you want to make your brand stick. You want them to attribute to you. You don't want them to attribute to your competitor or to some other brand. So ways of doing that, memorable creative is number one. If you're unique, your concept gets remembered, period, right? And then you look at sonic branding, right? I just wrote in there that ba-da-ba-ba-ba, right? You trigger it, you know who that is. So you want to open and close with those audio elements. You want to feature the brand music and VO talent with the CSA Supers. And then additionally, persistent graphics, right? There's a small example there. It could be as small as your URL or your brand identity on screen. It could be as big as a QR code type sidebar that actually drives traffic based on offers. But whatever it is, get it up there and keep it up there. So no matter when they put their attention on the spot, they can see what they need to remember and where to go. And then additionally, branded elements. So you're opening and closing those branded elements. You're integrating brand colors, you're integrating the spokespeople you're known for, and oftentimes you can use a colorway throughout the entire piece that just pulls it all together and cues your brand. I think we'll see a few examples of that coming up here. And from there, I will toss over to Aiden about how we know what works in streaming.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So you produced and deployed a series of high quality streaming creatives, and now it's time to actually assess performance. Of course, you can assess top and bottom funnel metrics at the creative level, but it's also important to dig even deeper. By creating a custom schema of attributes and tactics, many of which Matt previously mentioned, a new view into creative performance is unlocked, which can really inform our future creative strategy. The example shown here illustrates how a food industry client can tag their individual creative videos with attributes like a concept or a tagline or an offer, each of which has its own set of tactics that are assigned depending on which is used. And this is really powerful because this will allow this client to understand the expected impact of a specific tactic on KPI response, not just the top level metrics of a specific video. So it's extremely powerful in this case. And so what this does is it brings us all the way back to our testing flywheel. From major themes and concepts to determining our heroes and honing in on those heroes through A/B testing and attribute analysis, we can start to create new hypotheses about which creative strategies may work in the future. The best part about this cycle is that it does not have to occur over a long period of time. By refreshing our assets over 1 to 2 month cycles, our creatives stay fresh and they evolve with our consumers' ever-changing habits, as I'm sure we're all very familiar in a world we live in today. So how does this all come together? So we have two best-in-class examples to share with you today. I'm hoping this is the more exciting part of this presentation where we can actually see some of the work our clients have done in action. So the first is from Tula, a skincare brand offering probiotic topical treatments. The creative asset you'll see in a moment is strong in highlighting Tula's wide array of product offerings with close-up shots and supplemented well with strong branding elements of color and founder voiceover. So let's take a moment here to watch Dr. Raj.
Probiotics to my patients' diets helped them feel better and gave them more balanced, glowing skin. I discovered the power of probiotic extracts in helping restore, nourish, and soothe skin when applied topically. So I started Tula Skincare to share the power of probiotics, formulating 100% of our skincare products with probiotic extracts, along with clean superfoods and skincare actives like peptides and vitamin C to give you clinically proven results.
Awesome, thank you. So Matt's going to take you guys through a couple of the really strong elements in this creative.
Thanks. And so when we look at, the cast best practices, we can see a lot of them really coming to the forefront here. I think it makes it a really effective piece. We're starting with intrigue. We've got that great shot that unfortunately was cut off because we watched part of it earlier. But that really intriguing shot of her face in the mirror really pulls in the audience right away. As humans, we can't stop cueing on people's eyes. And so that works really well to pull us in as viewers. And we look at that featured face, we look at quick cuts, there's some motion and some graphic branding. Also, we're introducing that product very early, and we're branding often throughout, and we're setting that premise right away. And then championing it with that strong human story from Dr. Raj. And we're keeping that flow of information up. And you can see there's this gorgeous branded colorway throughout, where we're using those branded colors that ties the whole piece and encapsulates it as one beautiful video. And then reinforcing with that product, often with persistent graphics and layered benefits. And then closing with a great CTA and a .com there, along with convincing VO. So how did it perform, Aiden?
Well, that's a great question, Matt. Thank you for asking. So over a 2-month period, this creative was used to serve over 26 million impressions across 17 publishers, including both full episode players and short form content. Dr. Raj achieved a 0.59% response rate and a 3.88 return on ad spend, both of which significantly outperformed the previous quarter for Tula. This was actually the second iteration of this creative with an updated voiceover that proved to be actually more efficient than the original video. So this was a great example of using the testing flywheel to understand how something performed previously, what tweaks might need to be made, and the results are, speak for themselves in this case. Our second example is from Aura, which offers a sleep tracking ring utilizing sensor technology. Some of you may be familiar. The Sleep Lab Video's strength is its product proposition, which is necessary for a unique product at a higher price point. It identifies a need for the consumer and highlights its companion app to illustrate a holistic offering. So let's take another moment to watch our second example from Aura.
Welcome to the Aura Sleep Lab. You need a bit more deep sleep. Getting enough high-quality sleep increases immunity. Why? Because sleep helps fend off sickness. A good night's sleep boosts your number of infection-fighting antibodies and cells. And with your Aura Ring, you can learn how to sleep deep and keep your immunity up. It's like having a sleep lab on your finger.
Awesome. Yeah, I love this spot. We talk about intriguing storylines, and I love how this one just pops through. Overall, you're opening with that great shot at the beginning, that intriguing visual, that branding, quick cuts in motion. So when we get to the spokesperson and he introduces, he's got a great premise, he's got that human engagement going on, very benefit focused that a lot of us can relate to. Very memorable, creative, and there's a lot of elements of like snide humor in here, which is beautifully rendered. So then we get the champion, right? It's keeping that tension high. It's doing those product details. We see that muted kind of brown tone that comes out of the ring design carried all the way through. And then finally, he's reinforcing, right? He's continuing that interest. There's some persistent graphics, layered benefits, and a great little product demo type thing going on there with the app on the phone. And then finally activating with that really clear CTA with strong branding and feature benefit action going on. So I'll toss it back over to you, Aiden, to see how this performed.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So quite a few more impressions served for this one over a similar period. So we delivered just about 56 million impressions in this case. Again, about 19 streaming networks and short form publishers in this campaign. 0.29% response rate represented a small improvement over a previous campaign, just about 3%. But the real tangible impact in this case was at the ROAS level, the return on ad spend, nearly 50% greater than the quarter prior. There were actually two other Sleep Lab variants live at the same time. So this was a case where a client was A/B testing, running similar creatives with varying attributes and tactics, like I mentioned earlier. And this one proved out to be by far the strongest, and why we chose it as our example today. So hopefully those two examples just kind of give you guys a very, insightful look into how certain clients from different verticals can create very different products, very different creatives, both that work and back out into tangible metrics that we're able to measure. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Kelsey to take us through adding further value to streaming measurement.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking through, building on the conversation so far around how you can think about measuring your streaming as you think about it in context of the rest of your marketing mix and understanding user path to conversion. So the first thing that I want to talk through for a moment is how can you understand what is the true impact of your test as you think about comparing it to, say, your other top of funnel prospecting channels. So you could be comparing your streaming test to Facebook prospecting, or even maybe some of you are also testing linear TV. And if you leverage some sort of measurement solution, you're able to see what is the deduplicated CPA or ROAS of that streaming test. And this is a really nice metric to leverage in addition to what you have in platform, because this is an additional data point to say, okay, I understand what the value of this channel kind of by itself is. Now let me see how this compares to kind of the rest of our marketing mix and performance there. Just to tie this back to one of the examples that Matt just walked us through with Aura was able to identify that their streaming test was actually performing better than Facebook prospecting and shift some of that spend from their prospecting efforts in Facebook over to OTT and continue to scale that channel. So that's just an example of where seeing this in the context of the rest of your mix can be really helpful as you think about some of those more like macro budgeting decisions that you could be making not only on a monthly basis, but even quarterly, to say for some of you that maybe have a budget by funnel position, or maybe you have an awareness budget or more of that like top funnel budget, where are we distributing our spend across our channels? The other thing that I want to highlight is the importance of understanding user path to conversion. You can also do this kind of back to one of the questions earlier around using QR codes. For those of you that use GA and use QR codes, you could understand streaming and the path to conversion through that if you have UTMs there. Right? And where this becomes really helpful is understanding, what's the impact of, say, having a streaming first touch point on the way that our users are converting. I'm sure for many of you that have run streaming tests before, and you also use Google Analytics, you intuitively know, okay, we're seeing an increase in branded search, organic search, and maybe direct site traffic. This isn't happening by magic, right? No one's really rolling out of bed in the morning and saying, I need an Oura ring. They may be, I had a terrible night of sleep, and then they see that commercial and they're like, oh, I need to go, search Oura ring, and then they convert off of that branded search. So you're really starting to understand, okay, kind of to this next piece is, what is the halo effect of the money that we're spending on top of funnel and streaming on the rest of our mix? And this can also be really helpful as you do some of that budgeting and forecasting, because I'm sure many of you, as you're forecasting out channel performance, you can say, okay, here's what we expect our return to be on branded search, or even those of you that focus on SEO and more of that organic activity, thinking about organic search. But as you start to understand that relationship, you can say, okay, and we're planning to allocate X amount of budget to streaming for this quarter. And based on the fact that we know that streaming is going to impact the way that users are converting, we actually should kind of increase what we expect the revenue output to be for these bottom funnel channels based on having that top funnel channel in the mix and starting to understand that relationship. And then I'm going to pass it back to Matt for some key takeaways.
Awesome. Thank you. So looking through all the things we've talked about, there really are kind of three major takeaways here. Streaming is a measurable and testable performance environment. Huge, amazing, going back to the way TV used to work. It's a miracle, and I love that. Second, streaming production is approachable. And then third, understanding that path to conversion can help identify where streaming fits in your broader mix, so you can really optimize to get your message heard and your product purchased.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt, Ian, and Kelsey, for sharing so much great info to our audience. Streaming is very complicated for someone like myself who is not native to it, and you all make it so simple to be able to listen into and learn so much about. So thank you all. For our audience, we would love to be able to continue the conversation. There was really great conversation in the chat about streaming capabilities and all. We have three great streaming experts here, and Snooty and Rockerbox would love to be able to continue to do great work for you, like we have our clients that are featured on the webinar. So let us know if you're interested in having a follow-up conversation. That poll is live in the polls dashboard. So if you toggle over from chat to polls, you'll be able to respond to that poll as well. All right, and as you all are responding there, we will jump into Q&A. I know there's lots of audience questions answered during the session. So we'll just start off with the question of, a lot of our audience at the beginning said that one of their roadblocks for utilizing streaming was not understanding measurement available in 30 seconds or less. If you were talking with a client or brand who's not utilizing streaming, what about measurement would you say is the biggest plus point or reason why they should be utilizing streaming?
Yeah, I can take that one. I mean, I think the biggest takeaway in this case, I think, is that it's very possible. I think that's one of the myths around this channel, especially when you compare it to some of the other scalable channels many companies start off in the search space or the social space, is that TV is this black box where we deploy media and we don't really understand the impact. And I think the biggest takeaway from today is that it's couldn't be further from the truth. We have so many avenues of measurement that we can deploy. We can get as granular as we need to be, from creative to device to publisher and partners. We can audience target. There's so many different things you can do in the streaming world that even weren't possible in the streaming world a few years ago. And so that would be my biggest takeaway, is that if measurement is the roadblock and the investment is there, but you're not sure about how to measure it, don't let that be the reason that you don't jump into one of the more world-changing channels in the last decade, and something that's very well positioned to continue to grow in the next 10 years.
Awesome. Thank you, Aiden. All right. Our next question for you all is, we've heard a lot of feedback from audiences about budget efficiencies this year, given current economic climates. And there's also, similar to measurement, that we hear a lot of, myths about budget and spend with streaming advertising. So what would you all recommend for someone who is, trying to be budget conscious, but also wants to still break into streaming? What are ways to do so in a way that balances both of those?
I'm happy to take that one as well.
Yeah, I can also speak to.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Kelsey. Yeah, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, one thing to consider, and have seen this across a number of Rockerbox clients, is the importance of breaking out your budget by more of that like top funnel and maybe even mid funnel and bottom funnel spend. Because if you think about really starting to cut, and you cut drastically from top of funnel, then you should expect your bottom of funnel to then suffer. And this may not happen immediately, but this could happen, say at the end of Q2, you're like, wait, why did we not hit your new customer kind of acquisition target? And it's because eventually you started to stifle the top of funnel and the users that you're driving in. So I think it's helpful, as you evaluate not only budget, but also performance, to have different targets and goals for each of those points, to make sure that you don't cut off, that stream of new users coming to site.
And that's why something like having 2 to 4 pieces of creative simultaneously running helps, because you can hit different people at the different levels of care about, and also the other types of things that might benefit their world.
Awesome. Thank you both. All right. I know our audience had, lots of great questions that were answered throughout. And so we will move forward from Q&A. For our audience, we have a fantastic resource of our digital marketing hub. So I just launched a box in the bottom left of your screen where you can go there. We would love to be able to, I'm getting ahead of myself. You can check out all sorts of resources there for streaming advertising and across the digital marketing spectrum. So make sure to check that out. All right, I want to sincerely thank our speakers for joining us today, Matt, Aiden, and Kelsey. Thank you all so much, and for Rockerbox also for joining, and also for our audience for being so engaged and asking really great questions. I'm also going to launch a box here, and it'll pop up too once we close out the session. We would love to hear your feedback, both on this session and then also topics that you'd like to see going forward. So thank you all again. I hope everyone has a great rest of their Thursday.
Thank you.